that gets to one of the advantages of a family business, at least a functioning one, and certainly for us. Our business has been hit hard by both the severity of the recession and by what the web is doing to media. Two big hits at once. You know, some of you, the cliche that the web once was eating print. Now the web is eating the web with the relentlessness in terms of advertising going down, in terms of people sitting on marketing budgets. So you got two hits at once. Fortunately, in a functioning family business, at least with ours, we've been around 92 years. What has helped us through this period are the stories we grew up with about our grandfather who started the business. Oral history, especially in families, can play a very useful role, even if family members don't go into the business, understanding not just the highlights, but also some of the challenges faced, gives people a perspective when something like this hits. When we were growing up, we heard stories about how the company boomed in the 1920s. My grandfather was offered the equivalent of tens of millions of dollars to sell out in the late 20s. He refused to do so. Came the Depression. 3 years later, his company was bankrupt in all but name. And all the things he had to do, Scotch Week, every fourth week he didn't get paid. He couldn't cash his own paychecks. He just put them in a safe. There wasn't enough money in the bank. My father working what we call the mail cage, opening up subscriptions as you did physically in those days. And each day my grandfather would come by and ask the bookkeepers, how did we do? Usually in the Depression the answer was bad. Then one day the chief bookkeeper said to my grandfather, I've got good news, Mr. Forbes, we have a profit this month. My grandfather looked at him, scowled at him, and said, young man, I don't give a damn what your books show. How much cash do we have in the bank? So those kind of stories, that it's not just good times, bad times, are essential in meeting these challenges. Another thing, which you're all familiar with, but it takes time and effort to do it, is communications with family members. With us, we realized with my father, he eventually got control of all the stock from his brothers, but when it came to me and to my siblings, we weren't my father. And to try to replicate that would have been a disaster. So the decision was made several years ago that we would have monthly meetings of the siblings every 4 weeks. We brought in a third party because we knew there are certain areas, and you know this too, where you can step on emotional minefields and get on things that don't directly relate to the task at hand. So bringing in people who are expert in family dynamics is just very helpful. You can get things said and get messages across that you might not have with all the baggage from growing up and family reunions and that kind of thing. And so every month or every 3 weeks in recent times, we get together. So even if a sibling or family member is not directly involved in the business, they are very familiar with what's going on, what the opportunities are, what the challenges are. And one of the good things that came out of it is, what do you do with family stock if you're not going to sell out? Well, over a 2-year period, we painfully negotiated a shareholder agreement, not the kind you usually find off the shelf, but met the particularities of our own families, about what do you do about spouses, children, things of that sort, who gets a priority, what process you go through if you want to sell shares or buy shares, was all hashed out, clawbacks and all those kinds of issues. So everyone, again, was on the same page. Communication. And then, two, you can discuss sensitive issues about succession, sensitive issues about if a family member wants to come in, what kind of training program do you have so it doesn't become ever personal. You don't get spouses saying, well, this person got preference over that. You have established procedures. It just makes it difficult, and sometimes it could be done by just somebody coming in and say, here's how to do it. But I tell you, if you do it among yourselves with people from the outside who can guide you so you stay on the task at hand, it just has that much more legitimacy in terms of meeting challenges and opportunities. Now, in terms of our own particular situation, we know we're going through a period where we're downsizing, been through some very painful belt tightening. But we also know, because of our own history, going through 2001, even though this period's more intense, where after 9/11, the print business went off the cliff, and we're losing money on the web, because in those days, we like to joke, ha-ha, that it was illegal to make money on information sites. But we made the decision. We'll tighten our belts, but we're also going to continue to invest, even though all financial advisors said you're nuts, continue to pour real resources on the web. Our competitors did not. Many of our competitors did not. Thankfully, we did. That is a big moneymaker, even in this terrible environment. So we're doing that again now, painfully cutting back, but also investing for the future. We're doing internal reorganization. Again, a family business, I think maybe it's a little easier. It's tougher in one sense, but easier in another sense, because once you make a decision, it has instant legitimacy. As we decide to sit down, my brother and I, but also in close consultation with others, what if we're just starting this business all over again? How would we do it? And so we're able to deal with a lot of things, traditions, wonderful things of the past that have grown up over the years, but say, okay, new environment, here's what's got to be done, so you don't get the usual scowls, regrets on some of the things that has to be done, but also, though, everyone is seeing it as much as humanly possible with the same set of eyes, so you don't get the inevitable backbiting, sniping, or if you do, it's in the privacy of a home, and it's done in a way that's not going to poison and disrupt family relations. Very, very important to do. So we're reorganizing the company, combining the web and the print side, moving aggressively overseas, doing the way we gather information for our editorial services in ways that we hadn't done before, realizing that in the marketplace it's not one size fits all. You have to have different strategies and layers in terms of the marketplace that's evolving with ad exchanges and ad networks, advertising networks and the like. Upending everything. Somebody just told me today, the United States traditionally spends 3.5% of its GDP on advertising, more than any other nation. Perhaps we're spending too much. Perhaps the new norm is going to be 2, 1.7, 2.2, but very different and measured in ways that we had never had to do before. The old cliche, a guy would say, I know half of my advertising works and half doesn't, I just don't know which half works. Ha ha ha. Well, now people want metrics. That's the favorite word, metrics. They want to know how is it working. Even if it's not a good metric, they want a metric, and they will be refined and revised.